Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a pretty intense war of words that played out on the global stage. We're digging into a specific narrative from the political commentary group Midas Touch and breaking down their perspective on a really high-stakes standoff between the Trump administration and Iran. All right, let's dive right in. The source material kicks this whole thing off by showing you two very different messages from then-President Trump. On one hand, you have this really confident claim that many countries are going to send warships to help out in the Strait of Hormuz, but then it pivots. Suddenly, the message is that other nations need to handle security themselves, and the U.S. will just, help a lot. According to the source, this wasn't just a small change of plans, it was a huge reversal. So, to really get a handle on the story this source is telling, we're going to break it down into 5 key parts. We'll start with that contradiction, then look at how allies supposedly refused to help, the battle that erupted over news coverage, what Iran's conditions for peace were, and finally, we'll get to the source's own powerful verdict on the whole situation. Okay, let's start with that first point, the contradiction. The source argues this wasn't just some simple slip-up. They frame it as a really telling shift in the administration's public position, one that kind of set the tone for everything that was about to unfold. And this wasn't just a minor change in tone. The source claims this shift from announcing a strong coalition to suddenly asking for help was a sign of, and I'm quoting their narrator here, utter weakness and desperation when it came to securing this vital waterway. So, if the U.S. was changing its tune, how did that go over with its allies? Well, the account next dives right into the reported reactions from key partners when they were asked, from this perspective, to step up. First up, the United Kingdom. The source points to this interesting statement from Trump. He notes the UK is thinking about sending carriers, but then he adds this little stinger at the end. We don't need them any longer, but we will remember. The way the source frames this, it's less of a thank you and more of a thinly veiled threat. And this slide really shows the UK perspective, at least according to the source. They highlight a quote from academic Mark Seddon with this incredibly blunt take. His mess, not ours. He knows how to end it. In this telling, this is a direct response to the administration's whole approach. And apparently, it wasn't just the UK. The source then presents a very similar dynamic playing out with another key NATO ally, France. It seems there were reports, supposedly coming from Trump's statements, that France was also going to send warships. But here's where it gets really stark. The source highlights this super direct, very public pushback, citing a French rapid response account that just says, nope, not happening. It clarifies that its aircraft carrier was staying right where it was with a defensive posture. You can't get much clearer than that. So the picture the source is painting here is one where international support is basically falling apart. What happens next? Well, according to this account, the administration's focus shifts from the Persian Gulf to the news channels back home. It becomes a battle to control the story itself. And the source uses this really striking graphic, which was allegedly posted by Trump. It lists a bunch of media outlets and well-known journalists as gone or needing reforms. The narrator presents this as a pretty blatant hit list, targeting what they saw as unfavorable coverage. And the source claims this went way beyond social media. It points to this quote from the FCC chair, Brendan Carr, and frames it as a direct threat to broadcasters. The message, as they see it, was either course correct your coverage or you could lose your license. The source implies the public interest was being defined by the administration itself. Okay, so while all this was supposedly happening with allies in the media, what about Iran? The account next turns its attention to their actions and their demands during this whole period. The video lays out a series of aggressive actions allegedly taken by Iran and its proxies, like strikes on a U.S. embassy radar in Baghdad and on radar systems at Kuwait's airport. And the source's narrator has a clear interpretation of this. Iran was feeling emboldened by the whole situation. So, what did Iran want to de-escalate? Well, this slide shows their terms, as reported on Iranian state TV and cited in the source. The demands were huge. First, full compensation for all damages from the U.S. And second, 100% guarantee for the future, which, to them, meant the U.S. had to withdraw from the Persian Gulf completely. So after laying all of this out, the mixed messages, the spurned allies, the media battles, Iran's demands, how does the source tie this all together? Let's get to their final verdict. And here it is. The source absolutely does not pull any punches. The Midas Touch narrator gives this just scathing assessment, calling Trump a con artist and a loser, who in their opinion is destroying the United States while being completely outmaneuvered by Iran. For this source, that is the ultimate takeaway. So there you have it, the full narrative laid out in our source material. A story of conflicting messages, spurned allies, and media battles, all happening while military tensions are rising. And it leaves us with a really critical question about the power of words on the world stage. What does this kind of account suggest about the relationship between what a president says and what actually happens in the world?